All right, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into something that might just turn your whole idea of nice upside down.
Oh, this is going to be good.
We're going to be looking at excerpts from The Paradox of Kindness, a Machiavellian perspective.
Yeah, that title alone is a head scratcher.
Right, it's like kindness and Machiavelli in the same sentence.
Not exactly who you'd picture hanging out together.
So, for our listeners who maybe haven't cracked open The Prince lately,
It's been a while for me, too, I'll be honest.
could you give us like the super short version of who Machiavelli was and why his take on kindness is, well, kind of unexpected?
Okay, so Machiavelli, he was this Italian philosopher back in the Renaissance, and he's most famous for his ideas about power, like how to get it, how to keep it, the whole game of politics.
Yeah.
And his most famous work, The Prince, he basically says, hey, it's better to be feared than loved if you can't be both.
It's better to be feared than loved. That's hardcore.
Right. So you see why bringing him into a conversation about kindness is a little provocative, to say the least.
So how does this book, The Paradox of Kindness, tie Machiavelli into all of this? Like, what's the central argument here?
Well, it's really diving into this idea that maybe, just maybe, kindness, especially when it's like totally unchecked and not balanced with any kind of strength, can actually work against you.
Okay, that's already making me rethink all those times I've let people walk all over me in the name of being nice.
Right. Like, is it really kindness if it leaves you feeling drained or taken advantage of?
Exactly. So let's break this down. First of all, how does the book actually define kindness?
Yeah, so they start with a pretty basic definition. Kindness is basically any act of giving, time, energy, love, stuff like that, for the benefit of other people.
Okay, that makes sense. Pretty straightforward.
But, and this is where it gets interesting, they say not all kindness is created equal. Like some kindness is actually coming from a place of fear or a need for approval, not from, a genuine desire to help.
Oh, interesting. So, like, somebody might be super kind because they're terrified of being disliked, not because they actually care.
Exactly. And they argue that this kind of motivation can actually lead to this pattern of self-sacrifice that ends up backfiring big time.
Wow. It's almost like they're saying that kind of kindness is a form of, like, manipulation.
That's a strong word, but yeah, they kind of go there. Like it's not truly selfless if it's coming from a place of insecurity or neediness.
Okay, I am definitely seeing the paradox already. But how does the world respond to this kind of self-sacrificing kindness, even if it's, coming from a not so pure place?
Well, that's where it gets even trickier. They argue that society, even though we all praise kindness, we don't actually always reward it.
Wait, so you're saying, like, just because you're the nicest person in the room doesn't mean you'll get the promotion or the recognition or whatever?
Sadly, yeah. And it's not because the world is out to get kind people, but more because, well, things just don't always work out that neatly.
But don't we need to believe in some kind of, like, inherent goodness? I mean, if we let go of that, doesn't it get kind of bleak?
The book doesn't necessarily deny the existence of good. It just presents this kind of harsh reality. A lot of the time, the world operates more on power and self-interest, not on some universal law of fairness.
So, like, even if you're doing all the right things, being kind and helpful, there's no guarantee that you'll reap the rewards.
Yeah, sometimes the nice guys finish last. And to really drive this point home, they use this kind of bleak but powerful analogy, a wolf and a lamb.
A wolf and a lamb. Okay, paint me a picture here.
So imagine you've got this sweet little lamb, right, all innocent and kind, and then you have this hungry wolf. The book is basically saying that the wolf's nature doesn't magically change just because the lamb is being nice.
Okay, so even if you're the lamb, being all kind and gentle, there's still a wolf out there that might see you as, well, lunch.
Exactly. It's about understanding that there will always be people who prioritize their own needs and desires, regardless of how kind or generous you are.
Okay, that analogy is kind of unsettling, but I get it. But what about the impact on the kind people themselves? If they're constantly giving and not really getting much back, doesn't that take a toll?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
And the book talks about this invisible burden that
Wow.
can people carry. Like it takes energy to always be thinking of others, to be suppressing your own needs, to be trying to be the good one.
Ugh, I think we've all felt that. Like, you're the go-to person for everyone's problems, but when you need support, everybody's suddenly busy.
Yep, it's a common experience. And the book actually argues that it can be a slippery slope. Like kindness without limits, without a healthy sense of, power dynamics and stuff, can lead to real suffering.
So it's not enough to just be nice. We need something more. Enter Machiavelli.
You got it. The book goes deep into Machiavelli's philosophy, not to say we should all become ruthless dictators or
So
anything.
that would be a very different kind of podcast.
Right. But the point is to highlight the importance of strength when you're navigating all the complexities of like human relationships and stuff.
So we're not ditching kindness altogether, just maybe adding a little bit of strategic thinking.
Exactly.
But okay, Machiavelli can be a little dense, you know? Can you give us a quick rundown of like what his main ideas even are and how they connect to all this kindness stuff?
Sure. So Machiavelli, he was all about this idea of virtue, which isn't quite virtue in the way we usually think about it.
Right, like wearing white and helping old ladies across the street.
Not exactly. It's more about competence and cunning and adaptability. It's like the qualities a leader needs to maintain power and keep everything stable.
So being like really good at playing the game, whatever that game might be.
Yeah, and the other big concept for Machiavelli is fortuna, which is basically luck or fate, like all those forces that are, totally outside of our control.
So it's like acknowledging that the world can throw you curveballs, and sometimes kindness alone isn't going to be enough to deal with that.
Right. It's not being pessimistic, it's just being realistic. And that's where Machiavelli's emphasis on strength comes in.
Okay, so we need this strength thing, but how do you apply that to something as like gentle and soft as kindness? Those two things feel like they clash.
That's where the paradox really comes into play. The book's argument is that true kindness actually requires strength, but people often mistake it for weakness, and that's where the problems start.
So it's not enough to just be nice. We need to be strong too. But how do those two things even work together?
Well, they use this example of the classic nice guy,
The one who always finishes last.
Yeah, the guy who's constantly putting everyone else first, but ends up getting overlooked or taken advantage of.
Oh, we all know that guy. Always smiling, but you can kind of see the frustration simmering underneath. So is the book saying we should just ditch the whole nice guy act?
Not necessarily. It's more about recognizing the downsides of like excessive agreeableness. It's asking us to check our motivations and make sure our kindness isn't coming from, fear or insecurity.
So it's about being more self-aware and making sure our kindness is actually genuine, not just a way to avoid conflict or please people.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the nice guy thing. But you mentioned earlier that Machiavelli had this whole idea about the ideal leader being like a lion and a fox.
Oh, right.
What do lions and foxes have to do with being kind?
Okay, so the lion, right, that represents strength, courage, like the ability to command respect and protect yourself if you need to.
Okay, a lion makes sense.
And then the fox, that's more about cunning and adaptability, like knowing when to assert yourself and when to kind of blend in, when to be strategic.
So I need to be like fierce and sly to be truly kind. I'm not sure I'm loving this idea.
It's not about being ruthless or manipulative. It's more about recognizing that kindness without, some level of power or discernment, it can backfire.
Ah, like the lamb among wolves.
Exactly. And that brings us to the book's practical advice on how to balance kindness with strength. It's not about giving up on compassion. It's about making sure it's expressed in a way that works for you and the people you're trying to help.
Okay, so what are these Machiavellian tips for being like a strategically kind person? I'm ready to unleash my inner lion and fox.
All right, let's do it.
So lay it on me. What are these Machiavellian kindness tips?
All right, well, the book breaks it down into 4 main rules. And the first one is kind of a reality check, like a tough love kind of thing. It says, stop expecting fairness.
Whoa, 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 hold on a second. Are you saying that just because I do good things, it doesn't mean good things will happen to me? Like, what about karma? What about, the golden rule and all that?
It's not about being a bad person or anything like that. It's more about recognizing that, the world, it doesn't always operate on this perfect system of rewards and punishments. Just because you're kind doesn't mean everyone else is going to be kind back. And it definitely doesn't mean that, life is going to be fair all the time.
I get that. But doesn't that kind of make you, like, jaded? Like, if we all stop expecting fairness from each other, doesn't that just lead to, everyone looking out for themselves and nobody trusting anyone?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the book definitely doesn't advocate for becoming like cynical or distrustful of everybody. It's more about letting go of this expectation that every act of kindness, has to come back to you in some specific way. It's about accepting that sometimes you'll give without getting anything tangible in return.
So it's about finding the reward in the act of kindness itself, not in, like, what you get back from it.
Exactly. It's like shifting your focus from what am I going to get out of this to What can I give authentically and freely?
Okay, I can see how that would be a more sustainable approach in the long run. So that's rule number one, managing expectations. What's next in this Machiavellian kindness boot camp?
All right, rule number 2 is maybe the most practical piece of advice in the whole book. And it's a simple one, but it's tough to put into practice. Ready?
Hit me with it.
Learn to say no. And I mean, really learn to say it without feeling guilty.
Oh man, that is so much easier said than done. I am like a total people pleaser. I hate letting people down, and it always feels so much easier to just say yes, even when I'm already like swamped.
I think we can all relate to that to some extent. But what the book points out is that when you're constantly saying yes, when you really want to say no,
Mm.
it leads to all this resentment and exhaustion. You end up betraying yourself in a way,
So by always trying to be the nice guy, I'm actually doing myself more harm than good.
potentially. Yeah. And it can also affect your relationships too. When
Yeah.
you're always doing things out of obligation, your kindness starts to feel, well, less genuine.
Like it's more about keeping up appearances than actually caring about the other person.
Right. And what's interesting is the book suggests that people might actually push back a little bit when you start setting boundaries. But ultimately, they'll respect you more for having them. It shows that you value your time and your energy.
So it's not selfish to set boundaries. It's actually a way of being more honest in my relationships.
Absolutely. And remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself if you want to genuinely care for others.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this Machiavellian approach isn't about like squashing my kindness. It's more about like directing it in a more powerful way. So we've got expectations, boundaries. What's the next piece of the puzzle?
All right, rule number 3 builds on this idea of self-respect. It says kindness has to be a choice, not an obligation.
So it's not about becoming some like cold-hearted grump who never helps anybody. It's more about choosing when and how I express my kindness, like making sure it actually aligns with my own values and my own capacity to give.
You got it. The book makes this clear distinction between giving from a place of strength and giving out of fear or obligation. When you're always doing things because you feel like you should, it sucks all the joy out of giving, both for you and for the person you're helping.
It's like the difference between giving someone a gift, from the heart versus
Yeah.
like paying a debt.
Right. Perfect analogy. One is heartfelt and genuine. The other feels forced and kind of transactional. And when it comes to kindness, authenticity is everything.
All right, so we've got expectations, boundaries, making kindness a choice. What's the final rule in this Machiavellian guide to being kind?
Okay, this one might be the most surprising. Ready for it.
Lay it on me.
Cultivate the capacity for power, even if you don't use it.
Wait, hold up. Didn't we talk about this earlier, like with the lion and the fox thing?
Oh yeah, we're back to those animal metaphors.
So are you saying, like, I need to be ferocious like a lion to be kind?
Not exactly. Think of the lion as representing strength, like the courage to stand up for yourself and the ability to protect yourself if you need to. It's not about being aggressive. It's more about having that inner strength, to hold your ground.
Okay, so the lion is like the inner bodyguard of kindness.
Yeah, something like that. And then the fox, that reminds us to be adaptable, to think strategically, to know when to assert ourselves and when to, lay low.
So it's like having that inner roar, even if you don't always let it out.
Exactly. The book's argument is that even if you don't actively use power, just having the capacity for it commands a certain level of respect. Like, think about it. Someone who chooses peace but could easily defend themselves, they're usually seen as more admirable than someone who has no choice but to be passive.
So having that inner strength actually makes my kindness more impactful because it's coming from a place of like genuine choice.
Right. It allows you to give freely without that fear of being exploited or taken advantage of.
Okay, so these 4 rules, they're all about striking that balance between kindness and strength. It's not about becoming some Machiavellian schemer. It's more about being mindful and strategic and ultimately more empowered in how I express my kindness.
That's a great way to put it. The book isn't saying we should ditch compassion. It's more about recognizing that true kindness, it's most effective and most genuine when it's coupled with self-respect and the ability to protect yourself when needed.
So how do we put all of this into practice? Like, how do we actually cultivate that balance between kindness and strength in our daily lives?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
All right, so we've got these Machiavellian strategies for like being kind without being a pushover. But how do we actually apply this stuff in real life? It still feels a little abstract to me.
You're right. I mean, it's easy to talk about lions and foxes and all that, but how do we actually integrate that stuff into our, everyday interactions?
Hmm.
The book doesn't really give us a step-by-step guide or anything, but it really stresses the importance of self-awareness as like the foundation for all of this.
So before I even start setting boundaries or saying no or any of that, I need to like understand my own patterns and motivations.
Exactly. We need to ask ourselves some tough questions, like, am I always the one giving more than I'm receiving? Am I saying yes out of habit, even when it like goes against what I really want or need?
Hmm.
Am I letting people take advantage of me, just because I want to be the nice guy?
It's like doing a kindness audit, right? Like taking stock of where all my energy is going
Yeah.
and if it's actually being reciprocated or if it's just draining me dry.
I like that, a kindness audit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about becoming more conscious of your own behavior, understanding the reasons behind, why you do the things you do. And then if you realize that you are falling into that trap of always saying yes or sacrificing your own needs all the time, then you can start to implement those four Machiavellian rules.
Right, those rules. Okay, let's do a quick recap. Number one, stop expecting fairness. Number two, learn to say no.
Guilt-free.
Number three, make kindness a choice, not an obligation. And number four, cultivate that capacity for power, even if you don't use it.
You nailed it. And remember, these rules, they're not about becoming some like manipulative jerk or anything. They're about making sure that your kindness is authentic and sustainable and ultimately empowering for both you and the people you care about.
It's interesting because this whole idea of kindness as a source of strength, it feels almost revolutionary. Like we're so used to thinking of kindness as this, soft, passive quality. But the book is saying that it can actually be a really powerful force in the world.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that power comes from, aligning your actions with your values, from setting those healthy boundaries, from recognizing that true kindness, it's not about self-sacrifice. It's about mutual respect and genuine care.
It's about knowing your own worth and not letting people walk all over you, even in the name of being nice.
Yes, exactly. And there's this one line in the book that I think really captures this whole idea. It says, you do not have to stop being kind, but you must stop being powerless.
Whoa, that is a powerful line. It's like a call to action, right? To like step into your own power and express your kindness in a way that honors both yourself and the people you care about.
That's beautiful. I think that's exactly what it is. It's not about abandoning compassion.
Hmm.
It's about refining it, making it stronger, making it a force to be reckoned with.
It's about being kind and strong, not kind or strong.
Yes. It's about recognizing that those two qualities can coexist and, they can actually enhance each other. And I think that's a really important message, especially in a world that often seems to reward, aggression and self-interest over compassion and empathy.
So to wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway for our listeners? What's the one thing we want them to remember from the paradox of kindness?
I think the most important message is this. Kindness isn't weakness, it's a choice. It's a strength. It's a powerful force for good in the world. But, like any powerful tool, it needs to be used with wisdom and discernment. And you've got to have a healthy dose of self-respect in there, too.
So be kind, but be bold. Set those boundaries. Make choices that align with what you really care about. And don't be afraid to say no. Because real kindness, it's not about being a pushover. It's about showing up as your most authentic, most empowered self.
So well said.
Yeah.
And always remember, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to prioritize your own well-being. Because when you take care of yourself, you can actually give more freely and generously to others.
That's it for our deep dive into the paradox of kindness. We hope you found it enlightening and maybe even a little bit challenging. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and stay strong.